It's Clifton and Derek Forbort day here on Locked On Boston Bruins. We're looking back at their season that was and looking ahead to see whether or not they will be on the team next season.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked Beat. Today is Wednesday, May 31st, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day every single day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, and we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Like I mentioned off the top, we are going to review Clifton and Derek Forbort's seasons and also look ahead as to whether they'll be back with the Boston Bruins in 2023-2024. Before we get into that, a quick reminder that you can find the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my dad jokes, and hockey tweets at Ian C. McLaren. All right, as you can see by the spiffy new graphics that we have here on the YouTube broadcast, we're going to begin by looking at Clifton. Clifton had the best season of his career, without question. 78 games played for the Boston Bruins, career high 5 goals, career high 18 assists for, you guessed it, a career high 23 points, 0.29 points per game. That's a 24-point pace over a full 82 games. He missed a few games here and there. 1.2 shots per game, shooting percentage way up 5.4% over his career average of 3.8. A career high 208 hits, which is prolific. Physicality. And he also had 120 blocks, which smashed his career high of 62 set last season. 17 minutes and 51 seconds of ice time per game, which was down a bit from 2020-2021, but he only played 44 games that season. Now, longtime listeners of the podcast would know that I'm not a huge, or haven't traditionally been a huge Clifton guy per se. I see him as maybe a seventh defenseman that can rotate in and out on the bottom pairing, an energy guy. Bessie jumping up here once again. But he really impressed me this past season. I'm not going to lie. He was a very effective third line or third pairing defenseman, chipped in offensively, really chipped in when it comes to the physical side of the game in terms of hits, laying it on the line. He even had a short-handed goal for the Boston Bruins and was a big part of a very effective penalty kill for the Boston Bruins during the regular season. Now, looking at his underlying numbers a bit, he played 41.1% of his time this season with Derek Forbort. They were a -1 when it comes to goal differential when they were on the ice, which isn't bad. However, when it comes to shots and shot attempts, they were not very effective at suppressing those. A 46.1% shot advantage, 234 shots while they were on the ice versus 274 against. And shot attempts, even bigger gap, 44.1% in favor of the Bruins when these guys were on the ice. So they were routinely, I don't want to say trapped in their own zone, but caught defending, and they gave up way more shots and way more attempts than the Bruins were able to generate when they were on the ice. Thankfully, they were able to suppress goals, and that's a big credit to Linus Ullmark, of course, for cleaning things up. And their goal differential was only -1. Now, Hampus Lindholm and Connor Clifton also played together quite regularly. 22.6% of Clifton's ice time was spent with Lindholm. And a lot of that, of course, was when Derek Forbort was injured down the stretch. Very successful pairing here. They had a plus 16 goal differential, a shot attempt differential of 54.6, and a shot differential of 54.6 and a shot attempt differential of 55.8. Amazing. That is a pairing that could work. Say if Brandon Carlo were to be traded and Connor Clifton bumped up to the top 4. Not ideal, but hey, that pairing worked very, very well. Of course, Clifton would have to be re-signed. We'll talk about that a little later on. Clifton also played significant time alongside Matt Grzelcyk, 17.6% of his shifts. They were an even goal differential, caved a bit defensively as well, 44.3% shot differential, 46.7% shot attempt differential. The only other guy that Clifton had pretty good success with in limited time was Dmitry Orlov, actually. They were a +3 goal differential, but shot and shot attempt differentials were at almost 60%. So Clifton Forbort didn't really work, but when Clifton was given the chance to play with some better defensive partners like Hampus Lindholm, Dmitry Orlov, but especially Lindholm, very, very successful. And, there's real questions as to whether Connor Clifton will be back with the team next season. He's an unrestricted free agent, could get quite a bit of attention on the open market. And we'll talk about that more in segment number 3. And coming up, we will discuss Derek Forbort's season. But overall, fantastic season for Connor Clifton, which certainly benefits him as a pending unrestricted free agent and might have priced himself off the Boston Bruins roster. Now, before we talk about Derek Forbort, a quick word about today's sponsor, our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA Finals and the NHL Final right around the corner, and you need to make a fast break to FanDuel right now because new customers get a no-sweat first bet of up to $2,500. That's right, $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet of up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NBA and of the Locked On Sports Network. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your day every single day. Everydayers can expect continued year-in reviews. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about some of the trade deadline acquisitions and how they fared with the Bruins and whether or not they could be back on the team next season. For now, we're continuing our look at the third defensive pair, focusing specifically on Derek Forbort. All right, let's talk about Forbort, shall we? I should have mentioned as well that Connor Clifton was, of course, in and out of the lineup during the postseason against the Florida Panthers. And in the game that he came back in for Game 6, the Bruins could have really used the win there. He was not great with several turnovers in that one. and could have possibly used some consistency there when it comes to Clifton being in the lineup, whereas Forbort, who played all 7 games, maybe should have taken a seat in favor of Matt Grzelcyk, Connor Clifton, Lindholm, Carlo, Orlov, and McAvoy, of course. Now, when it comes to Forbort, he played only 54 games this season, missed a bunch due to injury down the stretch. He did have an 18-point pace, 5 goals, which was a career high, 7 assists, only 38 shots on goal for a very elevated 13.2 shooting percentage, 106 hits, only 88 blocks. You think of Forbort as this blocking machine, but 88, not very high. 1.63 blocks per game, which not near his career high, which was 2.05 set a couple seasons ago in Winnipeg. Now, of course, his reputation is built on being a exceptional penalty killer, and the Bruins did indeed have one of the best penalty kills in the NHL, but that sustained itself even in Forbort's absence. He missed some time early on, and the penalty kill took a bit of a hit, but then in the time that he missed later on, it was still very, very good. And in the playoffs against the Florida Panthers, Boston's penalty kill was only 75% successful, which lends further argument to the fact that they shouldn't have been married to Forbort playing in the postseason. There were perhaps some better options or a more effective lineup that they could have deployed. Again, Orlov, McAvoy, Lindholm all belonged in the lineup when healthy. Grzelcyk should have been in the lineup as well. And then Carlo, Clifton as your bottom 6 guys or your third, not your third pairing, but those guys probably should have been in as well over Derek Forbort. Now, Forbort played mostly this season with Connor Clifton. We've talked about that pairing already. -1 goal differential, negative shot and shot attempt differentials as well. The other guy he played mostly with was Brandon Carlo. They had a +2 goal differential, but shot differential 36.9 and a 42.2% shot attempt differential. No reason to put those two big bodies who are not especially speedy on the same pairing. The other guy that he played with sometimes was Charlie McAvoy. McAvoy is going to elevate anybody's game. They were a +5 goal differential, positive shot differential, but a negative shot attempt differential, which is kind of weird. Now, again, Forbort, said to be prolific on the penalty kill. And, of course, he was a big help. There's no denying that Derek Forbort can help on the penalty kill. And that he's a big body out there. He's willing to put it on the line. Physical, shot blocking. Although, again, his shot block totals were down a bit from previous career highs. In the playoffs, he appeared in all 7 games, which I still think, again, was a bit of a mistake. He, in the postseason, he and Clifton played 31 minutes and 36 seconds together, -1 goal differential, 37.5 when it comes to shot differential, 40.6 when it comes to shot attempt differential. He played a bit with Dmitry Orlov. They were on for 2 goals for, on for 1 against, but again, 40% when it comes to shot and shot attempt differentials. 38.9 playing with Brandon Carlo in terms of shot differential. 37.5 with Matt Grzelcyk. It wasn't really working with anybody in the playoffs, and yeah, we've talked about Jim Montgomery stumbling a bit with some decisions and remaining married to Derek Forbort when Matt Grzelcyk and Connor Clifton were in and out of the lineup against a team like the Florida Panthers, where you need that speed on the back end, you need that puck moving ability. That was a detriment, and there was no reason to keep Forbort in there for all 7 games when you had those other options. Now, coming up after the break, we're going to discuss whether Clifton and Forbort will be back as members of the Boston Bruins next season. Connor Clifton, of course, is an unrestricted free agent. He's 28 years old, prime of his career, coming off the best season of his career, and he will no doubt garner some attention around the league as a third pair defenseman that can be effective in those bottom pair minutes. And the Bruins facing a cap crunch and with already 7 NHL contracts for defensemen on the books, very well might have to swallow it and allow him to walk as an unrestricted free agent. Now, he wants to stay. He hadn't had any contract talks with the Bruins. He said he was hoping to do that in late June, honestly, obviously after a long run. His preference is to stay in Boston. He and Don Sweeney had a good talk after the season about how he played. Don Sweeney was reportedly proud of the regular season that Clifton had. They both wish the postseason went a little bit better for Clifton and for the team. Sweeney has a lot of work to do, but Clifton said Sweeney hopes he's part of what they're building for the future. Whether or not the Bruins can afford it, very, very questionable at this point. Now, one of the ways they can make room is by looking at moving Derek Forbort, 31 years old. He has 1 year remaining on his contract that carries a $3 million cap hit. He does have some no trade protection, however, 3-team no trade list. So I'm sure they can find that would leave 28 teams that they could potentially deal him to. Would there be any takers? The Bruins don't really have any draft capital in order to try to sweeten the deal, with no second-round picks for the next 3 years, no third-round pick next year, no first or second-round pick this year, and no fifth-round pick. They try to buy him out. Do they bring him back and play it out? It's a very interesting question, and being able to move him out as well as Mike Riley would be huge for the Boston Bruins, because those guys combined are taking up $6 million against the cap, 7.2%. So if he can move both of those guys without having to put them in the minors and eat some salary, that would be a coup for Don Sweeney. I'd much rather that than trading Matt Grzelcyk. We've discussed possibly looking at moving Brandon Carlo. You have Jacob Zboril who can walk in. All that to say, I would be surprised if Connor Clifton is back unless he takes a team-friendly deal. I'm sure he'll be able to get more than what the Bruins can sign him to on the open market as an unrestricted free agent, coming off the season in which he was a contributor to the best regular season team in NHL history. Forbort, I'd like to see him moved, but chances are he'll be back and either buried in the minors or maybe still eating significant minutes for the Bruins, but not necessarily very effectively. That is my Derek Forbort and Connor Clifton seasons in review. Hit me up in the YouTube comments if you agree or disagree with my assessments of these two guys and what you think might be in their futures. Again, tomorrow on the podcast, we are going to talk about Tyler Bertuzzi, Dmitry Orlov, Garnet Hathaway, and what they were able to contribute and where they may be next season. On Friday's show, ahead of the Stanley Cup Final, we'll look at Vegas and Florida and how the Bruins stack up and what kept them from being in the Stanley Cup Final. I hope you're all having a great week, friends. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you again soon here on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.